Does this mean, no, don't treat the other as some abstract category, communist, socialist, capitalist, imperialist, enemy, see in him or her the neighbor, a concrete human being? No, 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 it's much more complex here. You know, if you know truly the Judeo-Christian tradition, you must know that neighbor is not a nice guy with whom we sympathize. Neighbor is rather like, did you see, there is a movie and a novel which effectively can be called, subtitled into The Becoming of a Neighbor. It's, I think, Stephen King's Shining. A normal father becomes a neighbor by becoming this unfathomable monstrosity, and so on and so on. So, my point is that precisely because ideology is explicit ideology, is breaking down. We claim we live in post-ideological time, the only thing that matters is your be what you truly are, and so on, authentic life that you should live, that the fear of the neighbor is explosively growing. How does this function? Let me give you an example which, if some of you were at yesterday's debate, I already mentioned it, but I think I should repeat it because it's crucial. A little bit more than 1 year ago, I was at Harvard with a friend of mine from Slovenia, Mladen Dolar, and at a dinner after our presentations, we had some 8, 9 people, we didn't know each other, so an old professor who invited us said, okay, each of you should present yourself. Please state your name, affiliation, field of work, and your sexual orientation. Okay, for my European sensibility, this was a little bit stupid. No, like, it's none of your business. But what I'm saying here, now comes the point, is that I'm far from engaged here in the usual America bashing. No, 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 no. You have your levels where you are more coming out open than us. We have our own. My first association was, but wait a minute, what happened when, half a year ago, a friend of mine from United States visited me and other Slovene friends in Slovenia. We went to the Adriatic coast on a beach, and in Slovenia, as it's in most of the Mediterranean countries now, already for 30 years, topless is the standard. Nobody even notices it if you see women's breasts all around. But this was extremely offensive for the American friend. We all saw, he saw, oh my God, another breast, another breast. So you see, the point is that it's not that we are more civilized or whatever. The point is that each culture, and it's a complex reason for why, how does it function, why. For you, it's not a problem to publicly admit up to a point, I know. Your sex orientation, but much more difficult for women to walk topless with us. Nobody even notices it, but, and so on and so on. But what I claim is that precisely what my American friend feared is precisely this is the fear of the neighbor. This desiring other of jouissance, which in a way invades your embarrassingly stupid that narrative usually is. For example, I'm still now traumatized, even thinking about it. One of the standard formulas was, you know, the housewife is alone at home, a plumber comes and says, lady, I fixed the hole in the kitchen, and then lady says, but I have another hole, can you also fix it? Embarrassed. What's the lesson here? I think it's censorship. What is prohibited, to put it very simply, is to have explicit hardcore, see it all, and at the same time, let's call it naively, emotionally engaging, serious story. It's as if it would have been too much. You either have a serious story, but then you don't see it all, or you see it all, but then the story must be ridiculous. It's precisely, you know, if you see it all, this subjective engagement must be censored, which is why, incidentally, I know that in France, for example, Catherine Breillat and some others try to do, let's call them seriously artistic hardcore. Like if you saw maybe her movie Romance. You see everything in sex but at the same time engaging story. But that's why she cannot make a real breakthrough. That's why she remains marginal. Now, of course, I know this is no longer the case today, but my thesis is that today it's even worse. Today, the predominant, so I was informed, not that I hate hardcore, but it's simply too depressive to watch it. It's like a shortcut to impotence, I claim. Today, and you notice it if you watch it, it's so-called gonzo, which is a form of pornography where they no longer even pretend that it's a story. A couple does it, or 3, 4, whatever. I don't want to limit myself to a couple because then I will be accused of binary logic. 3, 4 of them, whatever. And then, you know, they engage in a debate with the director, with the cameraman. Am I good? You know, like to make it fun. I claim that censorship is here even more radical. It's as if they are in such a panic that even this minimal of narrative is felt as if it's too much. You had to be reminded can you imagine what terrible censorship this is? You had to be reminded all the time, no, it's just a joke, we are just filming, and so on, and so on, and so on. It's very interesting, this phenomenon. The fear is precisely the fear of the neighbor, I claim. Because if in this stupid copulation that you see there, if you were to fear that there is real desire, passion, emotion there, that would have been the neighbor. That dimension has to be suppressed. So again, the problem is how to maintain a distance towards a neighbor. Here, I claim we are approaching a dangerous state, because in the sense that one of the ways to keep the neighbor as a distance, the neighbor in her intruding proximity, are customs, habits, or rules of civility, and so on and so on. But in our culture of self-exposure and so-called sincerity, authenticity, they function less and less. And incidentally, one of the signs of this failure is, for me, politically correct attempt to directly regulate things. You know what's my problem with political correctness? Let's say how you treat the other in this sexual interaction, if we are talking about politically correct view on sexuality. Of course, I agree with all they say. But what I'm saying is that, how should I put it, it works only if it's part of our, how should I put it, spontaneous customs. The moment you explicitly regulate it, you undermine it in a way you even, in an immediate way, support, sustain aggressivity. Something is missing in this politically correct universe where you try to regulate, to explicitly posit norms, regulate it, and so on and so on. So the result is, now, unfortunately, this is no longer a joke, the result is clear in one of the most depressive movies that I've seen. It isn't yet released. A friend of mine from Denmark gave me a copy. It's you should see when it will come out. It's a documentary called Free Men, When Killers Make Movies, produced by Final Cut Film Production from Denmark, Copenhagen. This documentary is shot in Medan, Indonesia in 2007. It reports on a case of obscenity which reaches the extreme. You know, if you know history, that in 1966, there was a very tense situation in Indonesia. President Sukarno oscillating between communists and right-wingers. The communists tried coup d'etat, the right immediately strike back, and then there was one of the most terrible ethnic political cleansings. Around 2.5 million Chinese were slaughtered, mostly under the pretext that they were suspected communists and so on and so on. So this documentary portrays today's careers of some of the key organizers of that ethnic slaughter, who are nightmarish, brutal people. Now, today they are, of course, senators, businessmen, whatever you want. Now comes the really depressing